The night started like any other. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I watched the clock tick past 9. My husband, Daniel, had texted earlier that he'd be working late. Again. Lately, work had become the word that hung between us like a curtain. I used to believe it meant long hours, deadlines, responsibility, but lately it just sounded like distance. The house was too quiet. Our golden retriever, Max, slept near the fireplace. The TV hummed softly, but I wasn't really watching. I was scrolling through messages that had started to feel more like excuses. Can't talk now meeting. Running behind. Love you, see you soon. Each one shorter than the last. I tried to shake off the unease, but my mind wouldn't stop turning. When did we start living like polite strangers under the same roof? When did the laughter fade? We used to stay up late talking about everything, our dreams, our fears, the future. Now, he barely met my eyes when he said goodbye in the morning. It wasn't one big moment that changed things. It was the small ones, the quiet ones, like how his phone never left his hand, or how he suddenly cared about his cologne again, or how his late nights always seemed to happen on the same days. That night, something inside me shifted, a quiet, trembling instinct that whispered, "Look closer." I didn't plan to check his GPS. It just happened. He'd left his laptop open earlier that morning, and I'd noticed his location sharing was still on, a leftover from when we used it for safety during a road trip last year. I told myself I wasn't going to snoop, that I was just worried, that I just wanted to know he was safe. But curiosity, when mixed with fear, can feel a lot like survival. I opened the map. The little blue dot that was supposed to be at his office downtown wasn't there. It was across the city, in a quiet suburban neighborhood I didn't recognize. Parked. Not moving. I zoomed in. A residential street. Houses lined neatly side zero. I could almost see the warm porch lights, the trimmed lawns, the tidy little world that wasn't mine. For a moment I thought, maybe he's meeting a client? Maybe there's a reasonable explanation. But my heart already knew. It started pounding so loud I could barely hear myself breathe. I refreshed the screen, hoping it was wrong. But the blue didn't move. That's when I almost passed out. My whole body went cold. The kind of cold that starts in your stomach and spreads through your veins until even breathing feels like breaking. I don't remember standing up, but I did. I don't remember grabbing my keys, but suddenly they were in my hand. The next thing I knew, I was in my car, the night air sharp against my face as I drove toward the truth. The drive felt endless, every red light an accusation. Every streetlight a spotlight on my own fear. My mind kept flashing back to the early years, the way Daniel used to look at me, how his hand always reached for mine, the promises we made under the stars. "I'll always come home to you," he'd said once. But what if home wasn't me anymore? When I finally turned onto that quiet street, my hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the wheel to keep from losing control. There it was, his car. Parked right outside a small white house with a porch swing. A woman's shadow moved across the window. My breath caught in my throat. My heart screamed no, but my eyes said yes. I stayed there for what felt like hours, just staring. My wedding ring glinted faintly in the dim dashboard light, like it was mocking me. Then the front door opened. Daniel stepped out. His jacket unbuttoned, his smile soft. And behind him, a woman. Young. Pretty. Barefoot. Laughing. He touched her cheek before leaving, so gently, so naturally, that I didn't even need to see more. The world tilted, and for a second, I thought I might actually faint. Everything I'd built, every memory, every belief, it all cracked in one silent instant. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there, numb, watching the man I thought I knew vanish into the darkness. When he finally drove off, I stayed in my car until my hands stopped trembling. Then I whispered to the empty air. He said he was working late, but the truth was already working on something else entirely, the slow, painful dismantling of my life. It was 3 a.m. I was still awake. Daniel had come home, as if nothing had happened. He opened the door softly, took off his shoes, and in his usual tone asked, "Not asleep yet?" I smiled and said, "Just can't sleep." I tried to look into his eyes, but he averted his gaze. I wanted him to speak for himself, to admit the truth, for me to shout and ask, "Where were you? Who were you with?" But I remained silent. Sometimes silence is the most dangerous answer. The answer that burns the heart from the inside. Daniel changed the subject. "Had a lot of work at the office, big presentation tomorrow." I only nodded. My heart screamed, "Don't lie." But my lips stayed shut. When he went to take a shower, I put my hand into his coat pocket. There was a receipt from a restaurant whose name I didn't recognize. Rosalind's Bistro, 2 persons. My heartbeat stopped. 2 people, him and her. I put the receipt back in his pocket, as if nothing had happened. But everything inside me was breaking. The next morning I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes puffy. It felt like someone had stolen my reflection. I asked myself, am I really that weak? Will I just watch and do nothing? I decided I would not remain silent forever, but I wouldn't speak yet either. Now I would understand. I would watch. I would find out. I tried my best to act normal during the day. I made Daniel eggs and coffee for breakfast, like always. He was busy on his phone. He laughed, messaged, and hurriedly said, "Tonight, I might be late again. Need to finish a project." A small smile formed on my lips, the kind only a wounded heart can give. I replied gently, "It's okay. Work is important, right?" And he left, calmly, carelessly, as if he was sure I would never find out. The day seemed to stall. I picked up my phone and opened the GPS again. His office, and then the same movement. A few hours later, the same neighborhood, the same street. This time I didn't stop myself. I didn't go there. I simply recorded every detail, time, place, duration. I began collecting evidence. It was no longer just a matter of the heart. It had become a matter of fact. Evening came. I sat on the balcony. The sun was setting. The sky had a soft orange glow, beautiful, but sorrowful. In moments like these I always prayed. I prayed tonight too, but the words had changed. God, if I am weak, make me strong. If he is lying, bring the truth before me. And if my heart is about to break, give me the courage to mend my pieces myself. When he came home at night, there was not fatigue on his face, but a strange gleam. He hugged me, but the hug felt like an act. I rested my head on his shoulder, but poison sank into my chest. I asked quietly, "How was your day?" "Very busy. Maybe I'll be late tomorrow too." I softly said, "Okay." And that was it. A sea had formed between us. A sea of silence, lies, and distance. The next day, I made a decision. It was time for me to learn who that woman was. I Googled Rosalind's Bistro, a small restaurant in a quiet part of town with pretty lighting. I dressed neatly, put my hair in order, wore a simple outfit, and went there myself. The restaurant was quiet. I sat at a corner table and ordered tea. When the waiter came, I casually asked, "Did a couple come here last night?" A tall man in a blue shirt. The waiter thought, then said, "Yes, a gentleman with a woman. They come often." My heart sank again. They come often. I thanked him with a small smile. And in my heart I said, "All right, now the game isn't yours, it's mine." That night I decided for the first time to write my pain down. I opened my diary, picked up a pen, and wrote on the page, "Today I learned that love doesn't end. It just changes. Sometimes into trust, sometimes into pain, and sometimes into quiet revenge." I promise myself, I won't say anything yet, but one day he will. But one day he will drown in his own lies, and I will simply watch.